Welcome. Today we will explore how revenue incentives can shape criminal justice outcomes, sometimes steering systems toward detention over rehabilitation. We will unpack the economics, examine incentive loops, compare approaches, and consider policy levers that realign outcomes with public safety and human dignity. Let's begin. First, we will set the context and define key terms. Next, we will map the revenue incentive loop that can favor detention. Then, we will compare costs and outcomes between detention and rehabilitation. After that, we will review budget shares and briefcase snapshots. Subsequently, we will outline policy levers to fix misaligned incentives. Finally, we will test understanding with quick quizzes and close with key takeaways. Before we dive in, please remember this video is educational and does not constitute legal or policy advice. Evidence and figures vary by jurisdiction and time. We are using illustrative ranges to explain concepts. If you are making policy or operational decisions, consult local data, laws, and independent evaluations. To set the scene, many criminal justice systems and adjacent services operate under revenue models that can unintentionally reward high occupancy in detention facilities. Rehabilitation programs, while improving long-term public safety, may not align with short-term revenue in certain models. We will define cost of revenue as the direct cost required to generate revenue for organizations serving detention or supervision contracts, and we will examine how that cost structure can shape incentives. First, we define key concepts. Cost of revenue refers to the direct costs needed to earn revenue under detention or supervision contracts. Detention is the confinement-focused service set. Rehabilitation includes education, treatment, job training, and reentry supports designed to lower reoffending. Incentive alignment occurs when payment structures reward lower recidivism and stable reintegration. Misalignment occurs when revenue increases with occupancy or length of stay, rather than positive outcomes. Core outcome metrics include recidivism, employment, housing stability, program completion, and time to reoffense. With these definitions, we can now map the incentive loop. Next, we examine the incentive loop. If revenue is tied to occupancy, then full beds become a financial target. Bed guarantees and per diem structures can intensify demand for detention capacity. As budgets tilt toward custody, rehabilitation resources may decline, which can increase recidivism and refill beds, perpetuating the cycle. However, oversight mechanisms and outcome-based payments can break this loop by rewarding reductions in recidivism and stabilizing reentry, thereby shifting investment toward evidence-based rehabilitation. Now let us compare. Detention emphasizes security and custody, often with revenue driven by occupancy and length of stay. This can offer short-term cost predictability, but may increase long-term public safety risks if rehabilitation is underprovided. Rehabilitation focuses on treatment, education, and job placement, with revenue ideally tied to milestones or outcomes. Evidence-based programs tend to achieve higher completion rates and lower recidivism, especially when paired with reentry planning and continuity of care. Consider these illustrative ranges based on synthesized findings from various public reports and evaluations. Annual per-person costs tend to be higher for detention than for many community-based rehabilitation programs. Recidivism rates over a 2-year period are generally higher for detention-heavy approaches compared to evidence-based rehabilitation. Employment after release and program completion rates are typically higher in rehabilitation contexts. Median time to reoffense increases with robust support, reflecting improved stability. These are illustrative and vary by region, population, and program quality. Moving on, this pie chart illustrates a hypothetical facility budget. Security operations take the largest share. Healthcare and mental health services are significant, but often under strain. Education and vocational training occupy a smaller slice, despite their long-term impact on public safety. Administration and overhead are necessary, but should be scrutinized for efficiency. Profit or surplus appears as a modest segment in this example. Note that actual allocations vary widely by jurisdiction, contracting model, and provider type. Next, let us touch on case snapshots. In several regions, reallocating funding from custody to community-based treatment has improved employment rates and reduced reoffending over 2 years. Conversely, where occupancy guarantees are prevalent, fiscal pressure to maintain high bed utilization can weaken incentives to discharge or divert individuals. Integrated reentry models that connect housing, mental health treatment, and job placement often yield stronger outcomes, particularly for people with higher needs. Transparency through public dashboards that track recidivism and service quality supports accountability and continuous improvement. The markdown overview summarizes inputs, activities, outputs, and outcomes typically associated with effective rehabilitation pipelines. To place this in historical context, the timeline begins with tough-on-crime policies in the 1980s, continues with capacity expansion in the 1990s, and notes the growth of private contracting in the 2000s. The 2010s brought evidence-based programming and the broader use of risk assessments. In the 2020s, we see pay-for-success pilots, transparency dashboards, and more holistic reentry ecosystems. These shifts reflect evolving views about what actually improves public safety and reduces cost over time. Now we focus on practical levers. First, tie payments to outcomes rather than occupancy, measuring recidivism reduction, employment, and housing stability. Second, replace bed guarantees with flexible capacity contracts that support diversion or early release when appropriate. Third, use milestone payments for validated program components such as assessments, credentials, and job placements. Fourth, require independent evaluation and transparent dashboards. Fifth, ensure continuity of care through warm handoffs, peer support, and case management. Sixth, adjust procurement scoring to reward evidence-based approaches and equity impacts. Seventh, add risk sharing with performance bonuses and withholds. Eighth, invest in data systems that enable tracking of long-term outcomes across agencies. Quiz time. Which factor most directly sustains the detention-focused incentive loop described in this video? Options are A. Payments tied to reduced recidivism. B. Occupancy guarantees and per diem models. C. Milestone payments for job placement. And D. Public transparency dashboards. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is B. Occupancy guarantees and per diem models increase revenue with filled beds, which can encourage higher occupancy rather than prioritizing reintegration outcomes. In contrast, outcome or milestone-based payments aim to reward reduced recidivism and successful transitions. Next question. Which policy lever best realigns revenue with rehabilitation outcomes? Options. A. Occupancy guarantees. B. Per diem without quality measures. C. Pay for success tied to recidivism reduction. D. Fixed budgets with across-the-board cuts. You may pause the video now to think about the answer. We will discuss the answer in the next section of the video. The correct answer is C. Pay for success structures reward providers for achieving verified reductions in recidivism, which shifts financial incentives toward evidence-based rehabilitation and away from occupancy-driven revenue models. In summary, misaligned revenue can unintentionally prioritize detention over rehabilitation. Outcome-based payments and transparency mechanisms can disrupt the occupancy recidivism loop. Rehabilitation programs often deliver better long-term public safety at lower or comparable cost. Integrated reentry supports increase impact, and robust data systems with independent evaluation enable continuous improvement. To bring this together, we defined cost of revenue and mapped how misaligned incentives can favor detention. We compared detention and rehabilitation on cost and outcomes, and reviewed budget allocations and historical shifts. We also explored concrete policy levers to realign incentives with public safety and human dignity. The next step is to use metrics and models that reward safer communities and stable reintegration. Thank you for watching. If this was useful, please like the video, share it with a colleague, and subscribe for more evidence-based deep dives. How would you realign incentives in your community? Share your ideas in the comments. We look forward to the discussion.